All right, welcome to the Powerfully Imperfect podcast. We're at episode 11. Today, we're going to be talking all about security and safety. Security and safety, its role in your relationship, and why you had better be paying attention to security and not just growth or risk or reward or anything else. Security is the foundation of any relationship, or at least if you don't have it, you're going to find that your relationship will fall over. Without any further ado, let's get started. All right, so this is a powerful topic brought to you by my wife, who values security far more than I do. There was a time in my life I don't think I valued security at all. I thought that was just playing it safe and being quote unquote weak, right? Why did you bring this topic up with?
Just to me, it's one of the most important parts of our relationship. The thing that makes me feel comfortable with us, and I think for so long you didn't value that. So I felt that there was a weakness inside of me that I needed this security, and it's interesting to me because I don't even think we understood each other's definitions of what security means.
Right. So I think that's such an important thing is what is security in the first place? Right? There's lots of different words you could use for security. And what we're talking about today, is the relationship secure? Is it safe? Is it stable? Right. These are really interesting questions, and they're questions that you can ask across a myriad number of things. What I find is interesting when I ask people, like, what is security to you? They tend to go to the thing that has a problem and say it's that, like whatever they're lacking. Right. So if they're having financial troubles, well, having financial security would be secure. If they're having emotional troubles, well, having someone who understood me emotionally would be security. Right. But understanding what makes a safe relationship, what makes a secure relationship according to you inside of your relationship, right? So one thing I think that most families would say, hey, what makes me secure and safe is I have a home. Like I have a home base, it's my space and we control it. Now, Whitney and I are very different this way. I really believe more than most people, home for us is wherever we are. We grew up, we grew together, blending a family across 2 states and 5 school systems. And I mean, it was crazy. So I literally I don't know that the home base is even that important to us. I think we could travel every 2 weeks, live in a different country, and be fine as long as our home grew. Like as long as everyone was there somehow, we would be fine. So that's different for us. It's really about defining like what is security and safety to you inside of your relationship.
So what is your definition? I'd like to hear that. I know we've talked about this some in the past, but I want to know what your definition is, and then I'll tell you mine.
Sure. So I've been thinking a whole lot about this. Of course, we've known we're going to be doing this for a week. I've been thinking a lot about this. I think for me, security, the security I'm valuing the most right now is just having a relationship where I can be all of me all the time, be at least somewhat understood and accepted. So can I say exactly who I am, exactly what I'm thinking at any given time and be accepted and loved anyway? To me, that makes a safe, secure environment. It's something that I think is pretty rare in the world, to really think what you really say, what you're really thinking, and to be understood and accepted. So for me, that's a very important piece. I'm sure there's a broader definition, right? But it's a safe harbor from the world where I can really be myself. I can actually be naked and not everyone there, assuming that everyone is just me and you, that we're both okay with that.
And I know that I falter in that because I know sometimes I don't create that safe harbor for you. And then you've told me that. So I like the fact that you know that that's your security and that you're honest enough to say, hey, I'm not feeling safe in this harbor right now.
Well, I think that's so important too. Is like what we're talking about with safety and security is we're setting a standard, right? We're saying, hey, we need to think about this in our relationship. I think a lot of people don't even have this conversation. Their definition, a lot of people I've coached, their definition of safe is, well, I'm never going to punch her, and she knows that. That's a really low bar, right? Like, okay, great. Like you're never going to get physically violent. I guess at some point in our history, that was a big problem in most relationships, and it still is. And I take that very seriously where it's happening. But the truth is that's a really low standard for safety, is no one's going to punch anyone or stab anybody, right? We have to graduate past that to what makes us stable. If you think about jujitsu or any sport, one of the things you want is a stable base to operate from. If you're going to be running, if you're going to be wrestling, if you're whatever you're doing, you want that stable base. And I think the security gives a relationship that stable base. So when outside forces come, and they will, life will come at you. Outside forces are going to hit you in the face. When they come, you've got that stable, secure base to be able to handle it.
It's having, I think that the stability is having these conversations and not letting go of this conversation today because we are doing this on this particular video or whatever, but continuously having this conversation, because I think we have these like ebbs and flows in our relationship, that what makes me feel safe and secure today is definitely something that may not make me feel safe and secure down the road, or something has changed. I think we're always evolving as a couple.
Well, and I think also when you look at most couples, there's usually one person who's very risk averse and more aligned with security, which for us is certainly you. And then there's someone else who's really they love risk and they love adventure, and they're willing to kind of metaphorically put it all on red and see what happens. And if we double down, awesome, maybe we'll do it again. Or if we lose, no problem, we'll rebuild because we learned from putting it all on red. And for most people, there's at least one partner who's freaked out by that, by like, whoa, we can't go all in. I think also that in creating this safe space, remember that there's three main concerns in a relationship, right? Like when you're building a relationship, you're building for you, you're building for your partner, and you're building for like for you and your partner together. And so when we talk about the security of the relationship, do I feel secure? Does Whitney feel secure? And do we feel secure? And the we feel secure is where there's probably going to need to be some kind of compromise, right? Where I don't ever want to be constrained by a budget. She wants to only spend from an exact budget to the penny. We'll find some compromise in the middle where like, hey, 80% of our stuff is in a budget, and here's this pool of money that do whatever you want with, invest however you want, put it all on red. But we're going to keep this thing. What's interesting about this is when you start creating that compromise, you can actually get the benefits of both sides, because there is no right and wrong. There's no like 100% security is the right answer or no security is the wrong. Like there's not a right or wrong. It's just what works for our couple. And I think where I see a lot of people go wrong too is they see what works for them, and then they try to prescribe that out to other couples. I mean, we know couples who do things emotionally or physically or that are just dangerous. They just wouldn't work for us, right? But for them, it works really well. It keeps them happy. It keeps them engaged in their relationship. So it's not about, hey, this is the right answer. The question is, what is your answer? And are you and your partner on the same page about what is safety and security? What will we risk? What won't we risk? One way I think some people talk about this is like deal breakers. Here are my deal breakers. Again, that's cool that you know your deal breakers, but that's a really low minimal standard. Like, not only what are your deal breakers, but what are your deal makers? Like, what would be the ideal situation, and what are we moving towards together? I think it's important to think about that in terms of safety and security.
I also don't think it's your responsibility to give me that security. I think it's my responsibility to have to create the security that I want, right? Like if I look at my definition of security in terms of our relationship and what makes me feel safe and secure with us is that I'm able to stand in front of you and just tell you the truth and about my whole self, and know that you're going to stand with me. And then there's that whole financial side of things. It's do I have that financial security? And I think, it's interesting. I've thought so much about this that I don't think it's either one of our, jobs to go out and make the money for the family. I think it's a responsibility we share. And
well, I think it's super important also to say that our relationship is secure does not mean that there are no instances of insecurity. To say that our house is stable and on a good foundation doesn't mean there aren't problems. I mean, one of the doors came off of the hinges today for no particular reason. I guess it's been wet outside, and it was the weirdest thing when you can't shut the door. I'm like, what the hell's going on? And one of the hinges is falling off of the door, right? Okay, well, we fixed it, but does that mean the house is insecure and a huge problem with the rheostat? No, it just means something weird happened with the wood in the door and we needed a little bit longer nail, and it's fixed. So the idea that I'm in a secure, stable relationship does not mean there are no instances of insecurities, right? I'm an insecure guy. And in very particular, because of a really tough history with my mother, right, I'm insecure around the primary female love caregiver in my life, which is Whitney. Now, that has nothing to do with her, and there's nothing she'll do to fix that. I will constantly wonder what it is about me that keeps her around. I think this is more common than most women believe. I'm just going to say this, like, most men that I know, like most, and I'll say like most good guys who are really like good men who are trying to actually make the most of themselves, are at least a little bit puzzled as why their wife is with them. Like they know they bring some value, but it's like, man, why is she even here? Why? Like I'm not that into me. Why is she, right? And that was, you guys are like a prize. They give this amazing thing to me, and so there's some insecurity, like some unstable part of me that's like, man, am I good enough? Is this really going to work? And the fact that I have those thoughts does not mean we have an insecure relationship, does not mean that everything is horrible. It just means that I have personal insecurities that I will bring to the relationship. Same with Whitney bringing hers. I don't want people to think that security and safety in a relationship is the lack of insecurity. That would be to set a standard that is inhuman.
Well, and I don't think that I can fix your insecurities. I mean, I know that. Like, I wish that I could just put all of that to rest so that just wouldn't fester up inside of you. Same with me. But I can remind you. I can continue to do my part in reminding you of why I am with you. And I think sometimes we get lost in that, but just hearing you say that today, right now, is a reminder to myself to, hey, like he does have insecurities, and here's how I can help with those insecurities, not fix them.
Well, and especially like if you're living in a second marriage or second relationship, or you have some experience of things going bad. So whenever things go negatively, it's really easy for your mind to jump down that whole rabbit hole of what happened before. And here we go again. I have clients who are in their third, fourth, fifth marriages. They very quickly go to divorce because they have so much trauma and experience with it. One of the most powerful things that happened to me with Whitney in our relationship and creating security is we're in a really contentious fight, right? Like and fights are interesting because I think there's safety and security in fights when they're constructive. When it's a constructive fight. Now, how do you know if a fight is constructive? Can you stop in the middle of the fight and like hug each other? Can you kiss each other? Can you like, oh hey, here's your shoes in the middle of that fight? If you can, you're probably in the midst of some kind of constructive confrontation. If you can't, you're probably in the middle of a destructive one. But we were in a really intense confrontation. Whitney kind of stormed out of the room. As she stormed out of the room, I lanced. I'm sure what I said is, why are you even with me, right? Because this is where I go in my insecurity when I can't understand what's going on. And I remember her coming back into the room, busting the door open. I mean, it was like a loud. It says, "Listen, you need to understand something. You're stuck with me. Like, if you think the answer to this is I'm leaving you or that I don't want to be with you, you're wrong. You're stuck with me. So we got to figure this out." And then she slammed the door and walked off. But it was, for me, it was this huge moment of security of like, oh, wow, we're not having a fight about whether or not we belong together, or whether or not we're going to stay. We're having a fight about this one thing. And I don't even remember. I'm sure it had something to do with kids or scheduling or feelings hurt in some way. But like, that was for me, it was a huge safety and security moment of realizing, oh, okay, here's the conversation about this thing, not whether this is the thing that ends us. And I would say for most couples who are trying to figure shit out, stop saying the word divorce. Stop saying the thing I say, like, for example, like, why are you even with me? No, take for a given that you're staying together. When Whit and I got together, both of our second marriages, both of us cheated in previous relationship, and then married each other. So it's like, well, can we cheat? Of course we can, because we did it together, right? So there's a lot of insecurity in that. And when we got together, we just said, hey, there's no escape hatch. We're getting in a submarine together. We're going to live in the little yellow submarine under the sea, and we're welding the door shut. So like, this thing goes down, we die with it.
I think it's a big reminder to us that when we do fight, to not fight dirty, because as couples, we know the biggest insecurity that our spouse usually has. Maybe you don't, and I would like inquire and have this conversation, but we know how to touch that big insecurity, and then we'll get pretty petty sometimes when we're arguing, and we'll want to touch on that biggest insecurity. So, I mean, my encouragement to anyone that's listening to this and to myself that, hey, when I get into conflict, to not fight dirty with you, to not touch those deepest, darkest insecurities.
Right. So, I mean, there are some things in your relationship that are worth, if we're going to use the house building analogy, that are worth digging up the foundation for. But every little petty fight, if you go right to someone's insecurity, like fighting dirty is a problem because it creates a situation where you're not safe. And when you're not safe, everybody's in scarcity and panic mode, right? Your house is a place to relax and be yourself. If your house is on fire, it is not a place to relax and be yourself. And you'll make some really weird decisions, right? I often ask parents, hey, would you break your daughter's arm? Like, would you purposefully break your daughter's arm? Every parent, right, that I've ever asked is like, no way, not even. I'd rather my arm break, right? And then I'll ask, would you break your daughter's arm? Is the only way to get her out of the way of a freight train that was about to hit her. And then every parent does the exact opposite way. Of course, 100% chance I would. Right now, when we're in fear, when there's no safety in a relationship, we will start believing we're in the scenario where breaking the arm is better than dying. And we'll start making really poor, really hurtful, dangerous, eroding decisions for the relationship. Why? Because we're not in a state of safety. It feels like a train's about to run us over. And then we start taking acts, right? Someone who's lost their mind is dangerous because whatever's happening in their mind, to them, it's real, even though it's not out here, but they'll start taking acts that are based on that myth. And so as we fight dirty as couples, we can put ourselves in this place of fear. And in that place of fear, we start making really bad decisions that will have painful, traumatic effects that could ultimately undermine the relationship.
It does. It undermines. I know I've done it with you, and I know you've done it with me, and it's learning from that conflict and in moving forward in terms of, okay, I want to feel secure in this relationship, and you happen to be the person I want to spend the rest of my life with. So how can I make him feel secure? Again, it's not to fix your partner's insecurities, but know that you can help to not go there or push them there with some of the things that you say or do.
Yeah, and I think some of that is just really in communicating up front, right? Because there really is no reward without risk. We can't live a life of no risk. We can't live a life of never venturing out, never having any insecurity, but checking in with one another. Hey, I'm doing this. It's going to risk that. I think that's okay because, and then just hearing, right? There's certain things that not going to be allowed to gamble with, right? The safety, security, and lives of our children. We're not going to gamble with that. Like our children's ability to talk or hang out with us. I remember at a point there was a party we got invited to, and I wouldn't go because one of the big stipulations of my divorce is I couldn't have my kids around anyone who was drunk, and I figured there's a pretty good expectation that at this certain people would be drunk. And I remember telling Whit, look, it's not that I don't want to go. It's not that I don't love you. There's no way I'm doing this because if I do, I could lose the kids. And of course, when she understood that, then it was an easy decision for us. But sometimes that communication doesn't happen. Sometimes I'm thinking of it one way, my wife, Whitney's thinking of it a different way. And that the expectation, we get really frustrated because I have all the energy of I don't want to lose my kids on one side. She has all the energy of, hey, these are our friends. What the hell's going on? And so she's feeling insecure because I don't want to hang out with friends. And I'm feeling insecure. She's like, well, what do you want me to lose my kids? And sometimes those mismatches are just so easy to bridge if we just talk a little bit about what we're afraid about and not how we're hurt. What I'm afraid of is losing the kids is a different conversation than you're being ridiculous. I can't go to this party.
I don't know that, it's a hard conversation to have. And I appreciate the fact that we are able to go there, and it's not easy. It's not easy to have these conversations because I know sometimes, like I just heard you saying that, and for some couples, I don't know that they're even willing to go there or they know how. And it's just to start, and it may just be ugly at first, but just to be willing to have those conversations. I talked to several couples prior to this video today in terms of what makes them feel safe and secure inside of their relationships. And it was interesting to me how many different definitions people had. There a lot of people said trust, and a few people were definitely finances. But being on the same page spiritually makes a lot of couples feel safe and secure, and just faithfulness and doing what you say you're going to do and loving me through my faults. I think it was interesting to hear all the different things that made different couples feel safe and secure.
Yeah, I think one thing people will say that I'm a real big not fan of. So I'm a very not fan of that. I don't know how to say not fan. I don't want to say I'm an enemy of it, but you'll hear people say, "Well, security is knowing that I can say anything and I won't be judged." Right? Um, I agree with that to a point, which is I can say anything I'm really feeling and Whitney's going to love me anyway. But I hope that she does judge me, because sometimes I have some really dumb thoughts. Like sometimes I want to do things that would actually hurt us. I haven't really thought it through, right? We've had lots of conversations about lots of things that, like, it sounded cool in the moment and this would be amazing. But then what does that really mean? And Whitney can judge what I'm saying and say, hey, yeah, that sounds really cool on the surface, but then what happens after, and what happens if, and is it worth opening us up to that risk? And so I'm okay with my partner judging me as long as I know that she's doing it in love, and I know that she's doing it in acceptance, because we've got to make judgments. We've got to be able to critically look at our life and say, hey, here's who we are, here's who we want to be, here's where we are, here's where we want to be. Are we getting there? So for me, I'm not afraid of judgment of Whitney as much as I just want to know wherever she judges me, she loves me, and we'll take that journey together from where we judge to be to where we judge we want to be.
And I think the biggest key to that is actually listening to, what you're saying, listening to what I'm saying to you. And again, not needing to go in and fix it, but having an understanding of it, having an acceptance of it, and doing what I can to help.
Yeah, and I think having this on top of mind is security being a baseline for a healthy, happy relationship. Even when we're arguing, hey, we totally disagree about X, but is this a secure conversation? Does everyone feel safe? That, yes, physically is the lowest possible bar. So yeah, congratulations. Your wife doesn't feel like you're going to hit her, or vice versa, or your husband doesn't feel like you're going to stab him. That's not much. Does everyone feel emotionally safe? Does everyone feel like they can say what they want? Does everyone feel like they don't need to hide who they really are? Because here's the thing, in a relationship, you already know who you really are. If you've been together for more than a week, you have a pretty damn good idea of who you are anyway. So sometimes the insecurity can be caused by lying or by withholding. Withholding can be just as big a problem as attacking, right? So I just hope that this episode gives you a conversation. What is safety and security? And how do we make sure we're creating it, even in the negative moments, even in the moments that are going to come? One thing for us is we just don't, divorce isn't on the table. That's not a conversation that we have, and it's okay to express insecurities, and it's okay to express, but we're welded shut. Like, if this ship goes down, then we die in the ship. That's what it is. And that really, really works for us. Couples who are in turmoil, the more you're considering running away, the more you're thinking about divorce, the less chance that relationship has of working. And I'm not saying there aren't relationships that shouldn't end. There are many that should end. But you're not going to fix it very well if every time something bad happens, you imagine what it's like out there.
I think that's so important to not use some of that language, and just take note, like, what are some of the words that that you use when you're in a fight that just totally hit home on the insecurities, and maybe start to draw back on those. I know that I've actively worked on that for myself, and if that's at the end of the day, it all figuring out what makes you feel safe and secure, figuring out what your significant other needs to feel safe and secure in your relationship, and then coming together with that conversation. And I mean, what I would leave you with is, hey, I want to love Kevin how he wants to be loved. And that's really hard sometimes, because I want to be loved in a different way. And I oftentimes think, well, this is how I want to be loved. And we've got to keep in mind that we're different human beings.
Yeah, just like our camera settings are different. Mine is about 4 feet higher than Whitney. She likes to sit down. I can't stand that. I like to stand up. Whitney at my rig is not very comfortable. Me at her rig, I'm not very comfortable. That's okay. We create this together anyway. I just want to say that the biggest enemies that I know to security and safety emotionally are sarcasm and like disdain or disgust. Expressing disgust, expressing disgust at a behavior, cool. Expressing disgust about the person, that's going to erode very, very quickly. Sarcasm is the same thing. The danger in sarcasm is I started to realize about 10 years into our relationship that I wasn't 100% sure when Whitney was being sarcastic. There were many times she was being sarcastic that I was actually taking it as what she really meant. And I have started since to ask, hey, wait, are you being sarcastic right now or not? And that usually gets an eye roll. And of course, I'm being sarcastic, but it helped me a lot because for a long time, I wasn't sure. And sarcasm is dangerous for that reason because it can be interpreted a lot of different ways. And what does that do? It erodes security and safety. So the biggest thing is we invite you to a conversation about, hey, what does it mean to be secure? What does it mean to be safe? So you can build from there. Because obviously a relationship is way more than just safety and security. If all you're looking for is a bunker, you don't need a complicated long-term relationship for that. But if you don't have that foundation, you're going to constantly be searching for it. We really appreciate you guys being here. If you've liked what you've seen, please share it with your friends. Please follow us, like us. If you'd like to talk about coaching, not counseling. Counseling is all about healing in the past with a therapist, which is amazing. We have a counselor and we love her to death. Thank you, Sharon. But also coaching is about, hey, where are we? Where are we going? And how do we navigate that? How do we build the future together? Reach out, talk to us. We'd love to meet with you. Until then, we'll see you next time.